Why do we speak different languages? Why are babies' first words always things like mama or papa? Why does Siri mess up your voice commands even with all the AI behind it? And what does it actually mean to speak? If you ever ask yourself questions like this, you're already thinking like a linguist. Now, when most people hear the word linguist, they usually picture someone who speaks a ton of languages, or maybe a translator or interpreter. In fact, in the translation industry, professionals are often called linguists, and while some of them are, it's not quite the same. Whenever someone asks me why did I study it in college and I say linguistics, they almost always follow up with, what is linguistics? And that's exactly what we are going to explore in this video. What really is linguistics? Now, as I mentioned earlier, being a linguist doesn't necessarily mean that you speak 10 languages. But there's another common idea people have about linguists, that we are like the grammar police. Think back to your language teacher in school. They probably focus a lot on how you should speak. You know, correcting double negatives or telling you that you shouldn't end a sentence with a preposition. But linguistics is not about that. Linguists care less about how you should speak and way more about how you actually speak. You will almost never hear a linguist say a sentence is right or wrong. The word we use instead is ungrammatical. And even that is not a moral judgment. For example, take a sentence like, I ain't paying for nothing. To a lot of English teachers, that's bad grammar. But to a linguist, that's a perfectly valid structure in some English dialects. Like African American English, for example. It follows its own consistent rules. It just doesn't follow standard English. That's one of the first big ideas in linguistics. It's descriptive, not prescriptive. We are not here to tell you how you should speak, but to describe how you actually speak. We are here to study how language works in real life. So if linguistics isn't about memorizing grammar rules or speaking 20 languages, what is it about? Well, linguistics is actually a science, a way of studying human language in all its forms. And just like any science, it has different branches that focus on different parts of the system. Let's break down a few of the main ones. Phonetics is the study of speech sounds, how we produce them with our mouth, how they travel through Earth, and how we hear them. It's like the physics of language. So if you ever wonder how a French R is different from a Spanish R, or why English speakers struggle with tones in Mandarin, that's phonetics. Now phonology goes one step deeper. It looks at how sounds work inside of a particular language. For example, in English, the sounds p and ba make a big difference. That's why pad and bad are totally different words. But in other languages, those two sounds might be treated the same. Each language has its own phonology. That's why we struggle a lot with sounds in other languages, because they treat sounds differently from our mother tongue. Phonology is about those mental patterns of sound. Then there's morphology, the study of how words are built. Why do we say cats and not catses? Why do we say unbelievable and not believable? Morphology breaks down the building blocks of words, prefixes, suffixes, root words, and how they come together to create words. Syntax is the part that most people recognize. Sentence structure. It asks questions like, why do we say the cat chased the dog and not chase the cat the dog? Every language has its rules about the order of words, and syntax helps us to uncover them. Semantics, it's all about meaning. What words and sentences actually mean. Like, what's the difference between he passed out and he passed away? Very different meanings from two very similar structures. And talking about that, finally there's Pragmatics, which looks at how we use language in context. If I say it's cold in here, do I mean that I feel uncomfortable, or am I hinting you that you should close the window? Pragmatics is about what we really mean when we say things. And you may think, okay, cool, that's linguistics, explaining how we speak. But what we do with all this stuff? A lot, actually, a lot. Linguistics have real-world applications all around us. Some of them, you probably encounter them without realizing it. For example, voice assistants like Siri and Alexa, they rely on speech recognition, which is built using tons of linguistic data. Phonetics and phonology helps machine to understand how we speak and how to recognize what we are saying. And syntax and semantics helps them to understand what we mean when we say things. Then there's language learning apps like Duolingo or Memrise. Behind the scenes, these tools use linguistic data, especially morphology and syntax, to teach vocabulary and grammar in a way that our brain can handle. Linguists also work in forensics, helping analyze speech in criminal investigations, though I have to mention we have nothing to do with graphology. Linguists also document endangered languages, sometimes being the first person to write down the grammar of a dying language. This kind of work is vital to preserve cultural heritage. And yes, linguistics is also involved in artificial intelligence and machine translation, that kind of stuff that makes Google Translate possible. Those systems need to understand not only words, but how they interact with the context, across different languages, across different cultures, across the world. There are even linguists who work in therapy, helping people who have had strokes or speech disorders regain their ability to communicate. So linguistics isn't just about theory, it's about understanding how language works so we can resolve real human problems. So what is linguistics? It's a scientific study of language, how it sounds, how it's structured, how it's used, and how it evolves. But more than that, it's a way of understanding ourselves. Language is one of the most human things we do, and linguistics is how we explore it. Whether it's uncovering patterns in ancient texts, helping preserve indigenous languages, building better speech tech, or simply noticing why we say things the way we do, linguistics touches everything. And if you've ever been curious about dialects, accents, word origins, or how babies start to talk, you're halfway there. If you want to start exploring, we have a video about the strangest sounds in human languages. Are they really strange or just unfamiliar? I also left a document in the description box with further reading and some websites if you want to dive into linguistics. Thanks for watching and see you in the next one.